My fiancé laughed in my face when I asked if I could apply for an assistant manager position at his hotel. Sweetheart, you barely handle coordinating small events. Management isn't for everyone. His friends at the table nodded in agreement, raising their glasses as if toasting my inadequacy. What none of them knew was that I owned the entire luxury hotel chain they all worked for. And tomorrow, I'd be firing every single one of them. I sat quietly at the corner of the rooftop bar, watching Marcus Sterling hold court with his usual crowd of bootlickers. 4 senior managers from different properties across the Northeast, all gathered to celebrate his promotion to Regional Director of Operations. My champagne sat untouched as I listened to them dissect the supposed incompetence of various staff members, guests, and anyone they deemed beneath their elevated status. Did you see that new girl in housekeeping trying to suggest we change the turn-down service? Marcus's friend Craig laughed, loosening his tie. I told her to stick to making beds and leave the thinking to people with actual qualifications. I forced my practice smile, the same one I'd perfected over 4 long years. The smile of a woman who knew her place. The smile of someone grateful to be dating a man as successful and important as Marcus Sterling. The irony was exquisite. Every promotion Marcus had received, every accolade, every glowing performance review had been carefully orchestrated by me through layers of shell companies and discreet consultants. I was Evelyn Chase, the mysterious founder of Meridian Luxury Hotels, a boutique chain of 15 properties that had revolutionized the hospitality industry over the past decade. But to Marcus and everyone else, I was just Evie Hart, a freelance event coordinator who helped plan small corporate retreats and wedding showers. Evie's actually been doing pretty well with her little events, Marcus said, reaching over to pat my hand with the condescension of someone praising a child's artwork. She coordinated that retirement party last month. Only went 15% over budget. More laughter. What they didn't know was that the retirement party had been a test, a way to observe how Marcus and his team handled vendor relationships. The 15% overrun had been deliberate, designed to see if Marcus would pocket the difference or report it honestly. He'd pocketed it. Another line item in the growing file my investigators had compiled. I excused myself from the table, murmuring something about the ladies' room. Nobody really listened. In the bathroom, I checked my phone. A message from Rebecca Zhang, my most trusted executive and one of only 3 people who knew my true identity, waited on the screen. Final audit complete. Documentation is airtight. Board briefing scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. They're ready to meet the real you. I studied my reflection in the mirror. 4 years of playing a role had taken its toll. The designer clothes I loved were hidden in a storage unit across town. My naturally confident posture had been replaced with a slight, submissive hunch. Even my voice had changed, becoming softer, more hesitant, more apologetic. It had started innocently enough. After my father's hotel empire had collapsed under the weight of corrupt executives who'd nearly destroyed everything he'd built, I'd made myself a promise. I would create something better, something honest, but I would never again trust someone just because they seemed charming and ambitious. My first 2 serious relationships had been with men who saw me as a stepping stone, who wanted access to my growing success more than they wanted me. So when I met Marcus at a charity gala 4 years ago, I decided to try something different. I introduced myself as Evie Hart, event coordinator. I drove a leased Camry. I rented a modest apartment in a decent but unremarkable neighborhood. And I watched to see who Marcus really was when he thought I couldn't offer him anything. The answer had revealed itself slowly, painfully. The charming attentiveness of our first months together had gradually shifted. Once the ring was on my finger, once he felt secure, the mask had started to slip. He began forgetting dinner reservations, making plans without consulting me, expecting me to rearrange my schedule for his convenience while treating my work as a hobby that could be dropped at a moment's notice. But it was his treatment of others that had truly sealed his fate. I'd watched him berate a young server for bringing the wrong wine. I'd seen him fire a housekeeper for asking about overtime pay. I'd listened to him mock a front desk agent's accent behind her back while praising her to her face. Each incident was documented, recorded, filed away. I returned to the table just as Marcus was launching into another story. This one I'd heard before, about how he'd single-handedly saved the Manhattan property from a negative review by a food blogger. What he didn't know was that I'd read the original incident report. Marcus had actually escalated the situation by arguing with the blogger. It was a quick-thinking line cook named Maria Santos who'd saved the day by creating a custom dish that had turned the review around. Marcus had taken full credit and given Maria nothing but a grudging acknowledgement. The key to hospitality, Marcus proclaimed, his third scotch making him expansive, is knowing that the guest is always right, but the employee is always expendable. I pulled out my phone under the table and sent a message to Rebecca. Add Maria Santos to the promotion list. Make her executive sous chef at the flagship. Throughout the evening, I continued my dual existence. Publicly, I nodded along with their stories, laughed at the appropriate moments, played the role of the supportive future wife. Privately, I was making notes, cross-referencing their boasts against the employee complaints that had been quietly filed through the anonymous reporting system I'd implemented chain-wide. By the time we returned to the apartment Marcus thought we shared equally, I had enough material for 3 more terminations. The apartment was actually mine, purchased through one of my holding companies, but Marcus believed his name was on the deed. He believed his salary paid half the rent. He believed a lot of things that weren't true. You know what? Marcus said, pulling off his tie as he sprawled on the designer sofa I'd bought with my first major hotel acquisition. You should really aim higher with your career. Maybe try to get a job at one of the Meridian properties. I could probably put in a word for you. Entry level, of course, but it would be a start. I bit back the response I wanted to give. Instead, I smiled and said, "That's sweet of you to think of me." He was already scrolling through his phone, probably checking messages from the other woman I'd known about for 3 months. Another thing carefully documented and filed away. I'm serious. You need something more stable. This freelance thing is embarrassing when people ask what my fiancé does. I'll think about it, I replied, heading to the bedroom. In my private study, hidden behind what Marcus thought was just a linen closet, I had a different kind of office. 3 monitors displayed real-time data from every Meridian property. Occupancy rates, guest satisfaction scores, employee retention metrics, and most importantly, surveillance feeds. I'd spent the last year building an ironclad case against not just Marcus, but his entire network of enablers. Every inappropriate comment, every sexual harassment complaint that had been buried, every instance of discrimination, every falsified expense report, every kickback from vendors. The paper trail was immaculate. My phone buzzed again. This time it was from David Park, our head of legal. Ready when you are. The board is fully briefed. Security protocols in place. Media strategy prepared. This is going to be historic. I allowed myself a moment of anticipation. Tomorrow morning, Marcus would walk into what he thought was a routine regional directors meeting at our Manhattan flagship property. He'd be expecting accolades, perhaps another promotion. The board would be there, but he'd never met them in person. The reclusive founder of Meridian Hotels had always remained behind the scenes, communicating through intermediaries and video calls with the camera off. Tomorrow, the camera would very much be on. I changed into my pajamas, the same modest ones I'd worn for years as part of my cover. Tomorrow I would dress very differently. The Armani suit waiting in my real office upstairs would send a clear message. But tonight, one last night, I was still just Evie. Marcus was already asleep, snoring softly on his side of the bed. I looked at him in the dim light filtering through the curtains, and felt nothing but disappointment. Not anger, not hurt, just a profound disappointment that someone given so many opportunities had chosen to be cruel instead of kind, to take instead of earn, to diminish others instead of lifting them up. My phone lit up one more time. Rebecca had sent a photo of the boardroom, already set up for tomorrow's meeting. 20 empty chairs arranged in a semicircle. 1 chair at the head of the table. That one was mine. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow, 4 years of careful planning would culminate in a single, perfect moment of revelation. Tomorrow, Marcus Sterling would learn that the quiet woman he'd underestimated, dismissed, and belittled was actually the one person who held his entire future in her hands. The best part? He still had no idea. I woke before my alarm, my mind already cataloging the day's orchestrated chaos. Marcus was still sleeping, his phone buzzing on the nightstand with what I knew were messages from Ashley, the front desk supervisor he'd been sleeping with for 6 months. I documented every hotel room they'd used, every company credit card charge, every lie he'd told. Ashley would be losing her job today too, but for different reasons than Marcus's friends. The anonymous tip line I'd created had been flooded with complaints about her, actual complaints from coworkers she'd bullied and undermined. Unlike Marcus's circle, whose terminations would be about abuse of power and fraud, Ashley's would be straightforward hostile work environment violations. Still, her connection to Marcus would make the firing particularly poignant for him. I slipped out of bed and into my real morning routine, the one Marcus had never seen. The private elevator in the back of the linen closet took me up to my actual office 2 floors above in what Marcus thought was just storage space. In reality, I owned the entire building. He paid rent to one of my shell companies, never questioning why the landlord never raised the rate. Rebecca was already on video call when I arrived, her usual coffee in hand despite the early hour. The team is in place. Craig Thompson arrives at the Chicago property at 8. David Kim lands in Boston at 7:30. Marcus's crew will all be in their respective locations when you give the signal. And the board? Assembled and ready. I've never seen them this energized. I think they've been waiting for this moment since you first told them your plan 4 years ago. I smiled, pulling up the surveillance feeds from each property. Across the screen, I could watch the early morning routines of hotels I'd built from the ground up. The housekeeping staff starting their rounds, the kitchen crews prepping for breakfast service, the night auditors finishing their shifts. These were the people who actually made Meridian Hotels excellent. These were the people Marcus and his friends treated as invisible at best, obstacles at worst. Status on the employee notifications. Rebecca consulted her tablet. HR has prepared individual meetings for everyone affected by today's changes. Promotions, transfers, and the Maria Santos special package you requested. I'd spent considerable time designing Maria's new role. Not just executive sous chef, but a full equity stake in the flagship restaurant and a seat on the culinary advisory board. She'd earned it 10 times over, and Marcus had taken credit for her work at least that many times. At 6:30 I showered and dressed in my real clothes. The Armani suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. The Louboutins added 3 inches to my height. The Cartier watch had been my father's, a reminder of why I'd built Meridian in the first place. To prove that you could run a successful hospitality company without crushing the people who made it work. I left through my private entrance, taking the service elevator that Marcus didn't know existed. My actual car, a Mercedes S-Class, was in the secure garage. The Camry I'd been driving for years would be picked up later and donated. I wouldn't need it anymore. The drive to the flagship Manhattan property took 20 minutes through early morning traffic. I used the time to review the final documentation one more time. Every number was perfect. Every legal argument was airtight. Every piece of evidence was admissible and damning. Rebecca met me in the private entrance that led directly to the executive offices. They're starting to arrive. Marcus just texted you, by the way. I checked my phone. Running late, don't wait up tonight, big meeting with the board. I smiled. He had no idea how big. The board is assembled in the main conference room. Security is briefed. Legal is standing by. HR has the termination packets ready. We're go on your signal. I nodded, making my way through the corridors I'd designed but never walked through publicly. Employees I passed did double takes, trying to place my face. I'd been in their hotels 1,000 times, but always in character, always as Evie, the event coordinator. Asking humble questions and taking notes. The boardroom was exactly as I'd envisioned it when I'd commissioned the renovation 3 years ago, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. A table made from reclaimed wood from the original Meridian Hotel my father had founded. Chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. And at the head of it all, my chair. The board members stood as I entered. 15 men and women who'd helped me build this company from the ashes of my father's failed empire. They'd kept my secret for a decade, communicating with the founder through encrypted channels and carefully orchestrated meetings. Today, they'd finally see me in action. "Good morning," I said, taking my seat. "Thank you all for being here. Before we begin, I want to confirm that everyone has reviewed the documentation regarding Marcus Sterling and his associated personnel." James Chen, our lead board member and my father's former CFO, nodded grimly. "Every page. I've seen corporate malfeasance before, Evelyn, but this is systematic. The hostile work environment claims alone are staggering. The financial irregularities are worse," added Patricia Morrison, our audit committee chair. We're looking at roughly 2.3 million in fraudulent expenses, kickbacks, and embezzled funds across the 4 individuals you've identified. The fact that they've been bragging about it makes prosecution straightforward. I pulled up the presentation Rebecca had prepared. On the screen, a compilation of surveillance footage, email chains, and recorded conversations played out. Marcus and his friends, in their own words, confessing to fraud, harassment, discrimination, and abuse of power. The question, I said, pausing the video on a particularly damning clip of Marcus berating a housekeeper for asking about healthcare benefits, is not whether they've earned termination. It's how we handle this to protect the company and, more importantly, to protect every employee they've harmed. For the next hour, we reviewed strategy. The terminations would happen simultaneously across all properties at 9:30 a.m. Each person would be escorted to a private office, presented with evidence of their misconduct, and given a choice: sign the separation agreement acknowledging their violations and accept a supervised departure, or refuse and face immediate criminal prosecution. We'd consulted with the district attorney's office in 3 states. The evidence was strong enough that they were eager to move forward if any of the targets refused our terms. There's one more element, I said as we wrapped up the strategic discussion. Marcus's meeting this morning. He thinks he's coming here for a routine regional director's briefing. Instead, he's going to walk into something very different. James Chen allowed himself a small smile. You're going to do it in person. He deserves to see my face when his world collapses. They all do. At 9 a.m., I received a text from Marcus. On my way. Traffic is hell. Might be 5 minutes late. Save me a seat. I replied with a simple "see you soon." The conference room was prepped. The board members were seated. Security was positioned discreetly near the exits. Legal had the documents ready. And I stood at the window, watching the street below, waiting. At 9:23 a.m., Marcus Sterling walked through the lobby of the flagship Meridian Hotel for the last time as an employee. I watched him on the security feed, noting the swagger in his step, the expensive suit I'd paid for, the confidence of a man who thought he was untouchable. He took the elevator to the executive floor, chatting with someone on his phone about golf. The elevator doors opened, and he stepped into the reception area. Rebecca was waiting. "Mr. Sterling, right this way. The board is ready for you." I watched his face on the security monitor as he preened, straightening his tie and checking his reflection in the polished wall. He thought he was about to be promoted again. His career trajectory at Meridian had been meteoric, every step carefully engineered by me to give him enough rope to hang himself. The conference room doors opened. Marcus walked in, his smile confident, his hand extended for the handshake he expected. Then he saw me, standing at the head of the table, in a suit that cost more than his monthly salary. Flanked by the entire board of directors of Meridian Luxury Hotels. His hand dropped, his smile faltered. Confusion crossed his face as he tried to reconcile Evie, his struggling event coordinator fiancée, with the woman commanding the room. "Please, sit down, Marcus," I said, my voice no longer soft or hesitant. This was the voice I used to negotiate acquisitions, to address shareholders, to build an empire. "We have a lot to discuss." He sat slowly, his eyes darting around the room, trying to understand. "Evie? What are you doing here? Is this some kind of event you're coordinating?" "Not quite." I pressed a button, and the screen behind me lit up with the Meridian Hotel's logo. Beneath it, my name and title appeared in crisp letters. Evelyn Chase, founder and CEO. The color drained from his face. "That's not possible. You're Evie. You plan parties. You can't even afford to split the rent without my help." "The apartment is mine, Marcus. Purchased 8 years ago through Chase Ventures LLC. You've been paying rent to one of my holding companies for the past 4 years. James Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Sterling, we've asked you here today to address some serious concerns regarding your conduct as Regional Director of Operations." Marcus wasn't listening. He was staring at me, his mind clearly racing through every interaction, every dismissive comment, every moment he'd underestimated me. I could see the exact second it all clicked into place. "You've been lying to me," he whispered. "No, Marcus. I've been watching you, testing you, giving you every opportunity to be the man I hoped you were." I advanced the presentation to the first piece of evidence. "Unfortunately, you failed every single test. For the next 45 minutes, I walked him through his downfall. Every falsified expense report. Every kickback from vendors who'd overbilled us. Every harassment complaint that had been filed against him. Every employee he'd bullied, demeaned, or discriminated against. With each revelation, he sank lower in his chair. He tried to defend himself a few times. Those expenses were legitimate. That complaint was fabricated. I was just doing what I thought was best for the company. My company, I reminded him. The one you thought had rejected me at an interview 3 years ago. His eyes went wide. That was you? The woman who applied for the assistant manager position? I smiled, remembering that particular humiliation. I'd deliberately bombed the interview, making obvious mistakes to test Marcus's team. They'd spent the next week making jokes about the incompetent applicant who'd somehow thought she was qualified. Marcus had told the story at dinner parties, using it as an example of unrealistic expectations in the job market. That was me. I wanted to see how you treated candidates, how you evaluated talent, whether you could recognize competence when it was standing right in front of you. I paused. You failed that test too. Rebecca entered quietly, handing me a folder. The simultaneous terminations are complete. Craig Thompson in Chicago, David Kim in Boston, Robert Allen in Philadelphia. All signed the agreements. None chose prosecution. Marcus's head snapped up. You're firing them too? All 4 of you operated as a network. You covered for each other's misconduct. You enabled each other's fraud. You created a toxic culture that drove away talented employees and damaged this company's reputation. I slid the folder across the table. This is your separation agreement. Sign it, and you walk out of here with your freedom and a managed exit. Refuse, and the district attorney has enough evidence to file charges within the hour. He opened the folder with shaking hands. You can't do this. I'll fight you. I'll sue for wrongful termination. I'll tell everyone you entrapped me, that you lied about who you were. Please do, I said calmly. I'd love for a jury to hear how you fell in love with, got engaged to, and systematically demeaned a woman for 4 years without ever once asking about her life, her work, or her dreams. I'd enjoy watching you explain to a judge why you think my refusal to announce my wealth and position constitutes entrapment. Patricia Morrison spoke up. Mr. Sterling, I'd advise you to read page 7 carefully. That's the section detailing the financial restitution you'll owe for the funds you embezzled. We've been generous in our calculation, rounding down in several instances. Marcus flipped to page 7. His face went white. $270,000? I don't have that kind of money. Then you'll be making payments for quite some time, I replied. Of course, that's only if you sign. If you choose prosecution, the courts will likely add penalties and interest. He stared at the document, then at me. Why? Why would you waste 4 years of your life doing this? If you knew I was stealing, why not just fire me? Because it wasn't just about you, Marcus. It was about building a case against an entire culture of corruption. You and your friends weren't isolated incidents. You were symptoms of a larger disease. I needed time to identify everyone involved, to document every instance of misconduct, to build a bulletproof case that would protect this company from legal retaliation. I walked to the window, looking out at the city, and I needed to understand how someone could look at another person every single day and never once see them, never once wonder who they really were, never once consider that the quiet woman in the corner might be the most powerful person in the room. The silence stretched. Finally, Marcus picked up the pen. His signature was barely legible, shaking across the bottom of the page. Security will escort you to collect your personal items, I said as he stood. Your company credit cards, phone, and computer will be confiscated. Your access to all Meridian properties is revoked effective immediately. Any violation of the non-disclosure or non-compete clauses will result in immediate legal action. He walked to the door, then turned back. For a moment, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he said, "You're going to regret this. No man will ever trust you again." I smiled. I'm not interested in men who need to be trusted because they're too lazy to pay attention. Close the door on your way out, Marcus. I have a company to run. After he left, the board erupted in quiet applause. James Chin stood, walking over to shake my hand. That was masterful, Evelyn. Your father would have been proud. Now comes the real work, I said, pulling up the next presentation. We have 237 employees across our properties who deserve promotions, raises, or recognition that Marcus and his network denied them. We have a culture to rebuild. And we have a message to send to the entire hospitality industry about how we treat our people. For the next 3 hours, we worked through the revitalization plan. Maria Santos's promotion was just the beginning. Department heads who'd been passed over for Marcus's friends were finally getting their due. The whistleblower program would be expanded. Training on harassment and discrimination would be mandatory at every level. By the time the board meeting concluded, the news had spread through the company. The mysterious founder had revealed herself. The toxic leadership was gone. Change was coming. I spent the rest of the day meeting with employees. First, the ones who'd suffered under Marcus's regime, offering apologies and restitution. Then, the managers who'd tried to push back against his methods and been punished for it. Finally, the frontline staff who made Meridian Hotels actually function. Each conversation reinforced why I'd spent 4 years playing a role. These people deserved better. They deserved leadership that saw them, valued them, lifted them up instead of tearing them down. Rebecca found me at 7 p.m., still in my office, reviewing files. You should go home. It's been a long day. I don't know where home is anymore, I admitted. The apartment is toxic now. Full of memories of pretending to be someone I'm not. She smiled. I took the liberty of having your things moved to the penthouse here. The one you designed but never used. Seemed appropriate. I nodded, grateful. What's the damage assessment? How many people are we looking at losing over this? Honestly? Almost none. The exit interviews we've been conducting all day have been overwhelmingly positive. People are relieved. Several employees who'd submitted resignations are reconsidering. The Glassdoor reviews that went up this afternoon are glowing. And Marcus? Last seen entering his mother's house in Westchester. The social media monitoring team flagged several posts from her defending him, but they're not gaining traction. Too many former employees are sharing their stories. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of the day settle over me. 4 years of planning. 4 years of playing small. 4 years of watching people I could have helped, documenting instead of intervening. Do you have regrets? Rebecca asked quietly. I thought about it. About the employees who'd quit because they couldn't take Marcus's abuse anymore. About the talented people who'd been passed over for promotions. About the culture of fear that had festered while I gathered evidence. I have responsibilities, I said finally. To make sure this never happens again. To rebuild what they damaged. To prove that you can be profitable and ethical at the same time. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I opened it to find a long text from Ashley, the front desk supervisor Marcus had been sleeping with. She'd been terminated for her own misconduct, but her message was surprisingly thoughtful. I know I deserved to be fired. I was awful to people. I let Marcus convince me that being cruel was the same as being strong. I'm sorry. And I'm grateful you gave me a severance package anyway. I'll use the career counseling service you included. Maybe I can become someone better. I showed the message to Rebecca. There's hope there. Possibility for change. Not everyone will see it that way, she warned. Marcus is already trying to spin this as a vindictive woman destroying a man's career over a personal relationship. Let him try. The evidence speaks for itself. Over the next 3 days, the story unfolded exactly as we'd planned. Local business media picked it up first, framing it as a lesson in corporate governance. Then the national outlets, intrigued by the angle of the secret CEO who'd infiltrated her own company to root out corruption. By day 4, I was fielding interview requests from major business networks. Forbes wanted to profile my journey. Harvard Business School wanted to develop a case study. The hospitality industry was buzzing with discussions about leadership, transparency, and accountability. Through it all, I maintained my focus on the actual work. The promotions were finalized. The cultural training programs were implemented. The anonymous reporting system was expanded with additional protections. Every decision was made with one question in mind. Does this help the people who actually make this company work? On day 7, exactly 1 week after the terminations, I held my first all-hands video conference with every Meridian employee. Over 2,000 faces looked back at me from screens across 15 properties. Good morning, I began. For those who don't know me, I'm Evelyn Chase. I founded Meridian Hotels 12 years ago with a simple vision: create spaces where both guests and employees feel valued, respected, and seen. I paused, letting that sink in. This past week has been difficult. We've had to remove people from positions of leadership because they betrayed that vision. They treated employees as disposable. They created environments of fear and discrimination. They put profit over people, and in doing so, they damaged both. On the screen, I could see people nodding, some wiping away tears. But here's what I want you to know: you are not disposable. You are not invisible. Every housekeeper who makes a guest stay more comfortable, every front desk agent who solves a problem with grace, every chef who creates something beautiful, every maintenance worker who keeps our properties running, you are the reason Meridian exists. I pulled up a slide showing the new organizational structure. Over the next month, you're going to see changes: promotions for people who earned them, new policies that protect you, new training that respects your time and intelligence, new leadership that listens. The chat exploded with messages. Thank you. Finally. We believe in you. This is what we needed. I know some of you are wondering why I stayed hidden for so long. Why I didn't reveal myself sooner and fix these problems. I took a breath. The truth is, I needed to understand the full scope of what was broken. I needed evidence that would stand up in court and protect you from retaliation. And I needed to be absolutely certain that when I acted, the change would be permanent. More messages flooded in. The tone was overwhelmingly supportive. One last thing, I said as the call wound down. If you ever have concerns, if you ever see something wrong, if you ever feel unsafe or disrespected, I want you to use the reporting system. But more than that, I want you to know that my door is open. Not metaphorically. Literally. I'll be visiting every property over the next 6 months. I'll be talking to employees at every level. And I'll be listening. After the call ended, Rebecca handed me a tablet showing real-time social media monitoring. The hashtag Meridian Transformation was trending. Employees were sharing their stories, cautiously optimistic about the future. There's one more piece of unfinished business, Rebecca said carefully. The engagement ring. I'd been wearing it throughout my double life. A 3-carat monstrosity Marcus had insisted on despite my protests that it was too much. Of course, it had been too much. He'd bought it with embezzled company funds, though he didn't know I knew that. I twisted it off my finger and dropped it into Rebecca's hand. Add it to the evidence file. I'll want it appraised and the value added to his restitution payment. 3 months later, I stood in the same boardroom where I'd revealed myself to Marcus, but the mood was entirely different. The quarterly results were in, and they were remarkable. Revenue is up 18%, Patricia Morrison reported. But more significantly, employee retention has improved by 42%. Guest satisfaction scores are at an all-time high, and we've received 3,000 job applications in the past month alone. James Chen pulled up another slide. The publicity from your transparency has been overwhelmingly positive. We've been approached by 6 different investment groups interested in funding expansion. The Meridian brand is now synonymous with ethical leadership. I reviewed the numbers, but what I cared about more were the employee surveys. 89% of staff reported feeling valued and respected. 94% said they felt safe reporting concerns. 97% said they were proud to work for Meridian. Those are the numbers that matter, I said. The financial performance is great, but it's a result of having employees who care about the work they do. Rebecca entered with a folder. The final piece from Marcus's case. The restitution payments are scheduled. He's making minimum payments, which means it'll take him approximately 27 years to pay back what he stole. And his current employment? Still working retail. His mother's connections got him the job, but the manager reports he's struggling with the concept of customer service. Apparently being polite to people he considers beneath him is challenging. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, just a quiet relief that he could no longer hurt anyone under my protection. There's someone here to see you, Rebecca added. Says she has an appointment. Maria Santos walked in, and I stood to greet her. In the 3 months since her promotion, she'd transformed the flagship restaurant. Reservations were booked 6 weeks out. Food critics were raving. And most importantly, her kitchen staff reported the highest job satisfaction scores in the company. Thank you for meeting with me, Maria said, sitting down. I wanted to update you on the Culinary Advisory Board recommendations. For the next hour, we discussed her vision for expanding the restaurant program across all properties. Her passion was infectious, her ideas brilliant. This was what I'd built Meridian for, to give talented people the chance to excel. As she left, Rebecca smiled. You know, Marcus took credit for discovering her. If anyone asks him now, he'll probably claim he was mentoring her all along. Let him, I said. The truth is in the documentation. And more importantly, Maria knows her worth now. No one can take that from her. That evening, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere in this city, Marcus was probably finishing his shift at the electronics store, bitter about his fall from grace. His friends were scattered, some in different careers, others still struggling to find work with the black mark of termination for cause on their records. But I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about the housekeeper who'd gotten promoted to floor supervisor, the front desk agent who'd been transferred to a property closer to her family, the line cook who'd been given a scholarship to culinary school, the dozens of employees who'd been seen, valued, and rewarded for their actual contributions. My phone rang. My mother's face appeared on the screen, and I smiled as I answered. I saw the Forbes article, she said without preamble. Your father would have been so proud. I hope so. I'm trying to build what he always wanted, a company that proves you don't have to sacrifice people for profit. And the man? Marcus? Gone. In every way that matters. There was a pause. Do you regret the time you spent pretending to be someone you weren't? I thought about 4 years of biting my tongue. 4 years of playing small. 4 years of watching and waiting while I built an unassailable case. No, I said finally. Because it wasn't about him. It was never about him. It was about making sure that when I finally had the power to change things, I had the evidence to make it stick. It was about protecting everyone who came after. Everyone who deserved better than to work for people like Marcus and his friends. You sound like your father. I'll take that as the highest compliment. After we hung up, I pulled up one final document. The strategic plan for Meridian Hotels over the next 5 years. Expansion to 25 properties. A new initiative to recruit and train employees from underserved communities. A partnership with hospitality schools to create ethical leadership programs. A commitment to transparency in all operations. At the bottom of the document, in the section reserved for the CEO's signature, I signed my real name, not Evie Hart, the diminutive version I'd used to make myself smaller, not the hidden founder communicating through intermediaries. Evelyn Chase, CEO, founder.
Some days feel off, like I'm standing but still falling. A little pain, a little tired, and no one to tell it all to. There are days that feel unsteady, like I'm drifting out of place. Every step just feels so heavy, with a smile I have to fake. A little hurt I keep inside me, a little weight I always hide, and 1,000 quiet worries I've been holding deep inside. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. I keep walking through the silence like it's all I've ever known. Every crowded room reminds me how it feels to be alone. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. be stronger. Maybe I'll learn how to speak. But for now I keep it buried in the parts of me too weak. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection. Now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. So keep your sympathy behind you. I don't need what's left undone. Sometimes losing who once broke you is how healing has begun. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone